Europe's drive to tackle corruption appears to be losing momentum. That's according to the 2025 Corruption Perceptions Index released today by the Transparency International. For more on this, we are joined by DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu in Berlin. Chiponda, thank you for being with us. What are we seeing? Europe's anti-corruption efforts being stalled?
Thanks for having me. Well, according to Transparency International, the big one was the European Union's anti-corruption directive, which was reached last December. Now, while that should have been a zero-tolerance framework to fight corruption, it was watered down. And that was partly because Italy blocked the criminalization of public officials' abuse of office. Now, Europe has worsened in the Corruption Perception Index over the last 10 years. More countries have slipped than improved. And that includes the bloc's two biggest nations, Germany and France. Now, in France, there are growing risks of collusion between officials and and private interest. That is what Transparency International says. And that is despite the landmark conviction of former French President Nicolas Sarkozy last year. Now, he was convicted for receiving illicit funds also from the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi and using them for his campaign for the presidency. And in Europe, it is the United Kingdom, which left the European Union in 2020, which had the largest drop. And that was because of ongoing failures to enforce ethical standards for ministers, lawmakers, and other government officials.
So, Chiponda, what's actually driving this worrying trend, according to you?
Europe is confronting overlapping challenges. So it could be that European governments have taken their eyes off the ball when it comes to fighting corruption. Now, Transparency International says there have been efforts to loosen anti-corruption rules, checks and balances. And on top of that, there have also been state attacks on civil society, independent media, and whistleblowers. And that is what is increasing corruption in Europe because, of course, these conditions have made it harder to detect and expose corruption. And there, Transparency International points to Hungary and Slovakia as examples. And meanwhile, here in Western Europe, it is countries like France and the United Kingdom where there have been more corruption scandals in politics, which show that there may be more collusion between government officials and private interests. Now, that is why the perception of corruption in Europe has increased. And Transparency International's latest report also shows that the situation has worsened in 13 countries, and only 7 European countries have made improvements.
Okay. And what should we expect from European governments going forward?
Despite stalling, it is worth pointing out that Europe still scores better than any other region in the world when it comes to transparency. So while the perception of corruption may be on the rise, the fact is that it isn't as bad here as it is elsewhere. But the worrying trend may be that even Europe, which has been a positive example for fighting against corruption, standards may be slipping. And as Transparency International says, corruption risks have increased because independent checks and balances have been weakened. And there are also gaps in legislation. Now, that trend in Europe goes to show that even countries with robust systems may be vulnerable. And given all the challenges that Europe is dealing with right now, the war in Ukraine, a rift in relations with the United States, a sluggish economy, an aging population, to name but a few, it is hard to imagine that fighting corruption will be top of the agenda for politicians.
We leave it here. Thank you very much. Chiponda Chimbelu joining us from DW Berlin.